Hello everyone, this is going to be a video. I put out a video a couple days ago. It was actually yesterday. It was to JFK 371. He and I think we've settled our differences, and I think that we were cool. It's not like we were ever not cool, but I think tempers got a little bit flared there. So I think JFK and I are cool, but I wanted to make a video about a brief history of the conspiracy community from my perspective and how it is monetized and where the money is and who, it is a business. It is a community and it is a business. It's not just a bunch of, I think a lot of people have a view of the conspiracy community as its agents, a lot of agent provocateurs and government people, and it really isn't. What it really is, and there may be those people in there, but what it really is a bunch of people who have figured out that you can make a lot of money being a professional conspiracy theorist. So this is really from my perspective. In 1992 was roughly when I started to get into conspiracy. 1991, thank you Dreamland for correcting me, Dick. I'm kidding, I like him, I love him. 1991 is when JFK came out, I think I said 92. I saw it in 92. I think it was in the theaters in the wintertime, probably January, February, something like that. I don't remember exactly. And I was 16 in 1992. And I also discovered around the same time Bill Hicks. Bill Hicks, of course, I believe Bill Hicks is the best stand-up comic that's ever been. I know people will think that's ridiculous, and George Carlin, and you can point out a dozen other comedians there. But Bill Hicks, and I love stand-up comedy, Bill Hicks is one of the best. And I think if he would have lived, he would have become the best stand-up comic. I mean, I really do. I think he was already almost there. No one else talked about the Kennedy assassination. He called himself Chomsky with dick jokes. I mean, the guy was a fucking genius. And he died in 1994 of pancreatic cancer. And that leads me to some people online trying to monetize the conspiracy that Bill Hicks is actually Alex Jones. They knew each other. There's a video of them standing next to each other, I believe, during Waco. So Bill Hicks was, like I said, just a brilliant stand-up comic. You can watch his stand-up comedy on YouTube. But I got into the Kennedy assassination after JFK. My mom also went to Dealey Plaza. And she brought back a bunch of stuff. She brought back, because when you go to Dealey Plaza, there's a whole cottage industry there. Once a year they get together. If you go there November 22nd or that week of, you'll see a ton of people out there. Maybe not as much anymore, but because they've made some rules and some laws about keeping people off the grass and where, in the area and not loitering. But that week they usually are pretty good about letting people hand out pamphlets, DVDs, videos, etc., books. You can see a ton of conspiracy theorists that you see on YouTube. They'll descend upon Dallas. There's conferences. There's all kinds of stuff. Every November 22nd. So I got really into that, and my mom brought me back all this stuff, and I was already a member of Greenpeace. I was really into Greenpeace at 16 because I had learned that there was something called mad sea lion disease, and it was similar to what the mad cow disease was. They were the sea lions in the northern sea were, excuse me, I have a cold, being affected by mercury from atomic weapons that the military had been testing. So I was really already locked into the idea that the military was the problem. Plus, I'm from a state of Alaska that it's a military industrial complex up here and the oil interests are what it's mainly protecting. Other strategic, global positioning, etc. But essentially, it's an oil military state. And so I've always been hyper aware of that, and always known since I was 16 that the real enemy was the military-industrial complex. And JFK the movie helped out with that a lot. The famous Eisenhower speech is in the beginning of the movie. So I was really into. So I started paying attention to this is 92, 93, 94, 95, 96. Before the internet as we know it exists. It existed, but it didn't exist to the level we know it as. Or at least in Alaska, it was impossible, to get online anywhere here. And it was very expensive. It was expensive. So you had to, what you were relying on was conferences. There's a ton of conspiracy conferences. There's something called the COPA conference, which stands for the Conference on Presidential Assassinations, which is, they cover everything. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, they just cover every conspiracy. There's also the Conspiracy Con, which is in multiple places. They've had it in Alaska. They've had it all over this country, about 3 times a year. And back in the day, it was like 4 times a year. There's the conventions in Las Vegas. There's the MUFON conferences, the UFO conferences that go on in Las Vegas and Atlantic City. The UFO conferences go on in Sedona and in Arizona. Las Vegas is always a huge area because of Area 51. And this is about the reason why the UFO conferences started to take off. There was always these conferences in the 80s. Okay? In the 80s, they started in the 70s, hell, probably the late 60s, 70s and 80s, but they really exploded into the 90s. For obvious reasons, technology got cheaper, it was easier to communicate, but also because of the movie JFK. The movie JFK made conspiracy in America okay to talk about. You had a generation of people. I remember being a kid coming out of the movie JFK, and I have never seen this even to this day. And I've gone to, I mean, like everybody else in this country, I've gone to hundreds of movies. I walk out into the lobby, and there are people standing around right after this movie's over, just got out of the movie, standing around talking about the movie. Well, do you really think Lee Harvey Oswald killed Kennedy? What do you think about this? Isn't that crazy about Clay Shaw, Clay Bertrand? They start talking about all of this. I'm listening to people talking. I'm like, holy shit. And still to this day, it was one of the most exciting things after a movie, coming out of a movie and seeing people stand around in the lobby, post a movie and talk about it. After a film and talk about it. It was so great. And, because my friend worked at a movie theater, so I think I saw it like 3 or 4 times. I got in a bunch of times. It was a long movie. It was like 3 hours. And it was very popular, so it was always hard to get a seat. And I was a kid, so you don't really focus. You're fucking around with your girlfriend, or you're fucking around in school or whatever, but playing football, whatever. But I became, and it was very difficult to talk to my friends. I was very alienated in 1992, 3, 4. Even, it was hard because my friends weren't into conspiracies. And a lot of my friends had military families, and a lot of my friends were going to join the military, and people that I knew or had been in the military or the reserve or whatever. So assassination talk and conspiracy talk, I was always considered an anomaly. I was always considered interesting and fun to be around, but I was always an anomaly because I talked about these, oh, here we go again, Jason talking about the fucking government. Oh, here we go again, Jason talking about the military. And if you're a conspiracy theorist, you know this. You have these familiar, you're your friends. And I was entertaining enough so people would tolerate me. I think it's the same thing on YouTube. So it was a lonely, it was kind of lonely. You didn't have really a lot of people to talk to. And I lived in Alaska, and there was no internet. So there wasn't, few and far between. And so all these conferences would pop up. And when you go to these conferences, what you would see was you'd walk into the conference, and it would be 200-300 people sometimes. Sometimes it would be 50 people. Sometimes it would be a weekend event, usually 3 days, Friday night, Saturday night, and maybe close on Sunday, or maybe a 2-day event, whatever. Sometimes it would last a week. There'd be a bunch of different speakers, and you could come down, blah, 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 in these different places. And they still have all these conferences. And all the speakers get paid. And then after they get paid for their speaking, and they don't get paid a lot, a few $100s, but then they go to the back, and sometimes more, then they go to the back of the auditorium, they're done with their speech, and then you go into the back, you walk into the back and leave, and there's tables and booths set up with people like Jim Fetzer, people like Jack White, who's now passed away, people like, I've seen Jim DiEugenio, I've seen... Gosh, I'm missing a lot of names. It's been a long time. I don't really pay a lot. I don't go dip my wick back into the Kennedy assassination stuff very much because it doesn't go anywhere. I mean, it's kind of, it's one of those things, if you know a lot about it, there's no reason to keep rehashing it every year. I'm not going to write a book, and I haven't made my career on it, but a lot of people have made a career, and they've done other things as well, but a lot of people have made a career on Kennedy assassination work and have gotten really popular and made some money for years. And this industry started to bring out people like William Cooper. William Milton Cooper, this is the hour of the time. William Milton Cooper, of course, is a hero in the conspiracy community, the Patriot Community. He's a hero to people that don't really know his history. He was killed by, I believe, I don't know if they were federal agents, but they were state agents. Bill Cooper was not martyred. I think he wanted to be martyred. I think he had his own personal demons that he let catch up to him and overtake him. He carried a gun and drank a lot. And when people would park in his driveway, like kids would park and make out and drink, he would go down with his gun and flash his revolver at him and rev his engine and do all kinds of intimidating shit. And they weren't like right by his house. He was so paranoid that he assumed everybody was out to get him, and they weren't. And the alcohol doesn't help. So he was killed, and a lot of I've heard people call him a teetotaler. I mean, his supporters were just complete sycophants, and they still are. And he had made himself carved out a nice little niche for himself in the conspiracy community. He made money going around and doing speeches. He was a go-to guy. When you needed a conspiracy quote, he was a go-to guy. He was interviewed by Jacques Vallée. He was interviewed by everybody. He wrote a very popular book in the conspiracy community called Behold a Pale Horse. Matter of fact, I don't know any conspiracy theorist that that grew up when I grew up that don't own Behold the Pale Horse, including me. I own it and I've read it. Half of 1/3 of Behold the Pale Horse is quality. The other 2/3 is shit, and it's basically take Bill Cooper's word for it, or he takes sources that have been debunked. He was one of these guys that promoted the limo driver actually assassinating Kennedy, that kind of shit, and he lied about where he saw it. He used to say he would see these documents and this stuff in the Navy when he was intelligence. Then people would come out and go, no, William, no, Bill, I told you about that. I told you about the limo driver being shot, or I told you about this guy talking about aliens, or I told you about that. And he would claim that he also saw that, I also saw these, I can verify that story because as a naval intelligence officer, I would see these documents, and it was total shit. Totally horseshit nonsense. But he had to make shit up, and he had to keep the next thing so people paid attention to him. So he created a need. He was a salesman, and he created a need. And his need was, I have more information about these particular events. Bill Cooper had information on everything. And he would just make shit up out of whole cloth, or he would back ideas and stories like the Krill documents and which go into the Stargate bullshit lies, partially all this alien nonsense, all this disinformation that came out in the 90s about aliens and late 80s about aliens and UFO technology and stuff. I think it was people doing it for the military, and it was also people doing it for science fiction purposes to make a living and put out information or whatever, disinformation, or just to fuck with people, or just to get attention or whatever. So William Cooper kind of got ran out of the UFO community and ended up in the Patriot community, the PAYTRIOT community. Now, I'm not the person that came up with this concept. Many others have come up with the idea of the Patriot community. Look this up on YouTube. There's been tons of commentary done about this. People started to pop up in the late 90s that you did, and you can listen to William Cooper interview them. So people like David Icke, people like Jim Fetzer, people like Alex Jones, people like Jeff Rentz, people like Jay Widener, people like, I don't know if Jay Widener was back that far, but he was people like Richard Hoagland and his glass structures on the moon. That's a con artist. That's a professional conspiracy theorist, okay? People like all of those Defense Department guys that you see on Project Camelot, that claim aliens are real and UFOs are real, and they have interaction with them, and they know different aliens, and all these old lying Department of Defense pieces of shit that come out and talk about that have no evidence other than their own word for it. Which I think they have their own. I think some of them are Department of Defense disinformation about UFOs, and some aren't. Some are just old men who want attention. One of the guys that predominantly did this that William Cooper loved was John Lear. John Lear, and he liked Vernon Maxwell and Russell Pine, who is Vernon Maxwell. You have your Texe Marses of the world, which Texe Mars is actually a doctor. I mean, he's actually a professor at UT and knows a lot about robotics and things. But he also is, he also goes the other way with the Jews and the Zionism and all that bullshit too. And he used to be a favorite of Alex's until Alex realized that he was just cancer, and you can't have that cancer because it makes you look like an anti-Semite. Because that's what Texe Mars was. He was a Christian fascist. And he's still alive, I think. And he's a bright man, very bright man, but he was wrong about a lot. It's like Eustace Mullins. Just keep, enough. You go too far. You have good information, then all of a sudden it turns into some other crazy shit. And that's what, because you have to, I believe that a lot of people, I believe there's multiple motivations. One of them, you just believe it. You just think that you're paranoid and you think the government is all encompassing and everything is controlled and blah, blah, blah. And another reason is that you have to come up with new shit so people will pay attention to you. You can't go to the same conferences. You can't write the same books. You can't make the same videos. You've got to come up with new conspiracies when you're a professional conspiracy theorist. I cannot stress that enough. Professional conspiracy theorists, that's what they are. It's like being a professional football player. They don't go and play amateur football, meaning there's no competition. They're not going out and seeking to do something lower than what they're doing. They're not going out there and playing amateur football. They don't do that. Meaning the conspiracy theorist, the professional conspiracy, isn't giving you news. He isn't dabbling. Like, I try to talk about news stories. I talk about the NFL. I talk about the military. I talk about the Pentagon. I talk about people saying stupid shit. I talk about priorities. I try to talk about love and joy and caring and kindness and human beings and compassion and unions. And I'm a Eugene Debs liberal. That's what I am. And so that's what I try to talk about. And so I can play. So I'm not a professional anything. I can talk about everything, and I will talk about it. But professional conspiracy theorists can't. They have to stick to conspiracies. Alex Jones, and that is why this leads into Sandy Hook. Now, let me finish the 90s. Let's just get through the 90s. So we're in the late 90s. William Cooper is popular. Alex Jones starts to appear. All these other people I started to mention appeared. And they all were making money doing it. Professional conspiracy theorists. They all had radio shows. They all had internet shows. The internet hadn't come yet. They all had radio shows. They were making good money, some of these people on these radio shows. Coast to Coast AM. Art fucking Bell. Really, I mean, these are the guys that were the I don't know what you call them, the genesis of the internet conspiracy blowing up meme. William Cooper, Art Bell, Coast to Coast, Alex Jones, David Icke, Jeff Rentz, and I'm missing some, I'm sure, but Jordan Maxwell, Anthony J. Hilder, look him up. And I'm not going to go too into depth with these people, because if I do, this fucking video will be 3 hours long. So I'm trying to just give you a brief synopsis of how long these people have been around for, what their real agenda is, and what they really are saying. So now you have the late 90s roll in, and you have William Cooper gets murdered, okay, in 2001, right after 9/11, I believe. He gets murdered, so that looks like they're trying to, which he wasn't. Again, he was not martyred. He was a drunk who used to carry a gun, and it caught up to him. And he used to say, "I'm not going to die. You're not caking me. I would rather die." So, and he did. Self-proclaimed fucking, self-proclaimed tragedy, self-fulfilling prophecy. So, William Cooper dies, and Alex Jones explodes. Alex Jones makes Road to Tyranny and other DVDs. He tells you, buy my DVDs now, folks, and make as many copies as you want and hand them out at work and church and all these places and put them on car windows and go around your city. And Alex Jones did the greatest promotion marketing job of anybody in the conspiracy community. That was a brilliant move. And Road to Tyranny, I don't know if you've ever seen 9/11 Road to Tyranny. I wish people could go back in 2003 and watch that again. Go back to their mindset in 2003 rather than 2016, because it was a mind-blowing documentary if you didn't know that stuff about 9/11. If you didn't know some of the stuff, you didn't know that about Oklahoma City. If you didn't, some of the stuff you just didn't know. Very good documentary. But he's a professional conspiracy theorist. And you saw it. He's not a newsman. He's not trying to get to the truth of an issue. It's, I need a conspiracy so I can sell you a conspiracy. It's like being a car dealer. Car dealers don't sell pumpkins. They sell conspiracies. And so Alex Jones explodes. He gets marketed. Jim Fetzer is right there this whole time. Jim Fetzer is making 9/11 videos. He's working with Sofia Smallstorm, who comes up out of nowhere. She was a book publisher. She was an editor for a while. She came from the editing house that did Al Gore's book, The Inconvenient Truth, and Ray Kurzweil's book about transhumanism. She comes out, and then she starts making up, amongst others, Clifford Carnicom, and let's see who else. A lot of these guys in the early 2000s, they started to come out. Chemtrails were now a big topic of conspiracy. Morgellons starts to appear. Then you have the 9/11 shit that starts to appear, like No Planes Theory, Judy Wood's directed energy weapons, which Jim Fetzer backed both of those things. Until then he turned on them, but he didn't really turn on him. He just didn't support him anymore. And then he kind of turned on him to get it. It seemed like he was trying to get him more attention, but really that's not what it did. Then you've got a bunch of other people in the mid-2000s who start to pop up everywhere. And then YouTube explodes. YouTube takes off and allows anybody they want to sit in their house, and for free, if you want to, you can get all this software for free online. Get a microphone and record, like I'm doing right now. Getting a microphone and just recording your shit. And and you could video edit, you could pull clips off YouTube and other sources, tack them together with some music, or not even some music, but with you talking, show a picture that doesn't look right, show a shooting, 9/11, that's what No Planes was all about, was video manipulation and all that bullshit. And people learned from No Planes, partially, and another gentleman, Dallas Goldbug. Dallas Goldbug has been around for a long time doing this bullshit, ear matching and eye matching, and he's a professional conspiracy theorist. He actually worked with Robert Groden. Look up Robert Groden. He's a JFK hack. This is what they're professional. Dallas Goldbug's still around. He takes video and pictures of people and tries to claim that everybody's from the same crisis actor family. It's this huge family, and they're everybody. He showed celebrities that are not other people. He's clearly doesn't mean what he's doing. I've called Dallas Goldbug out. I've said this to him in person on videos that I've made about him, and he's left messages. I know you don't believe your shit. I know you don't. I just know you cannot believe that, Ed Harris is John McCain or whoever the fuck, whoever the fuck he used as an example. I mean, it was just ridiculous shit. It's like what Caliber hitters did with Bill Hicks being Alex Jones. Felix is just a fucking failed human being who doesn't have any talent. But Dallas Goldbug is a professional conspiracy theorist. And he saw when he was doing illustrations for Robert Groden how much money can be made in the conspiracy community. He saw it firsthand. And now he's riding that train. Dallas Goldbug takes donations and you can buy, go check him out. He's monetized that shit and he's done it for 10 years. Okay? So the 2000s are around and they keep going and people just start popping up everywhere. And then it really takes off in 2011 again because 9/11 had kind of run a dry course. And now you started to see the nuclear thing going on about 9/11. And, of course, who was out there pushing that? Jim Fetzer. Who was out pushing Jared Lee Loughner? Jim Fetzer. Who was out pushing James Holmes? Jim Fetzer. Who was out pushing any shooting that happened in the United States? Jim fucking Fetzer. And he wasn't doing it to disinform or cover up those shootings. He was doing it because he's a professional conspiracy theorist. Those are events that he can manipulate into you thinking they're conspiracies. And maybe they are, but he certainly didn't prove that they were. So he would come out and do these things, and he charges money. He gets donations. He gets paid to do speeches. He makes videos. And by the way, go ask Jim Fetzer all this yourself. If you have a Skype account, which is free, you can type in Jim Fetzer, and Jim Fetzer is not only on Skype, he will get back to you immediately. The guy is a relentless marketer. This is 24 hours a day with Jim Fetzer. And maybe not 24 hours a day, but he likes this shit. He also, I believe, is a photographer. He does wedding photography or something, too, as well. I mean, Jim Fetzer is not what Joel at Aryan Empires and others have turned him into. He's a normal, fat old man who is a professor who's extremely smart, but he's a professional conspiracy theorist and makes a lot of money doing it. You don't know what these guys are in their personal life. You don't know, like Mike Ruppert. Mike Ruppert killed himself, and he was an enormous alcoholic. Victor Thorn just killed himself. I would have never thought Victor Thorn would commit suicide. He was the guy that wrote the first book about Sandy Hook. I would have never assumed. I mean, you don't know what these guys' personal demons are. You look at Alex Jones. He just got divorced from his wife, and the train wreck that's going on there and how fat he is, and clearly he's drinking. You don't know what's going on with these people. You have no fucking idea if they're heavy gamblers, if they have expensive lifestyles, if you just don't know anything about them. And sure, some may be government agents. I just can't prove that. I don't even have the beginnings of the proof. Nor does anybody else that's actually spent money on private investigators and to look up background checks and do. These people are exactly what they appear to be. They're very public. There's no secret. They're not being paid by anybody. They're not useful idiots, as Lenin referred to, certain journalists. They weren't in the conspiracy. They were just useful idiots. That's not what he is, I don't think. I think he's just a professional conspiracy theorist, and nobody holds him accountable to anything he says. He can say anything he wants, and nobody will hold him the fuck accountable. And by the way, I've made videos about Webster Tarpley, and I've talked about other conspiracy theorists, the whole Lyndon LaRouche angle. This is something I think people need to understand. The whole thing is right wing. I hate to burst anyone's bubble out there, and if you think that your audience is anything but a bunch of right wing gun nuts, if you're a conspiracy theorist, you're insane. This is the average conspiracy theorist on YouTube, online, and going back to the 90s, this is what the average guy was. You're white, you're lower middle class or middle class, you have disposable income, you work with your hands for a living, you think the government is the federal government is an oppressive force that's going to take your firearms, you believe that you pay too much taxes for what you get, which you're probably right, you believe that all taxes should be cut, you believe that prayer should be taught in schools, you believe that you're usually religious or a Christian, but if not, you probably are, and I'm overgeneralizing here, but this is the majority of the people that are conspiracy theorist fans and give money and listen to Alex Jones and listen to Jim Fetzer. You believe that Israel is the real problem or part of it. The Mossad does everything. You live in a constant state of Zionist paranoia because all you've done is watch videos about Zionism. You're a Holocaust revisionist / denier. You are, let's see, what else are you? Oh, and you liberally wave the American flag around. As if the very thing that's the most oppressive force on the planet Earth, and it's oppressing you, and it's all the problems of you wave that around. You're still prideful to be American. And these are people who don't like blacks particularly, and don't like Latinos, and don't like minorities, and don't particularly care for any of that shit. They don't want to hear it. They think the rebel flag should be raised and flown just fine. They have no problems with. They don't empathize with minorities. They don't. And one of the reasons is because they feel like they're being marginalized and pushed out. They're making less money an hour. They're pissed off, and they're voting for Donald Trump, and they joined the Tea Party, et cetera, et cetera. They've all been manipulated by the right wing, and they continue to be. One of the ways that they get manipulated into, and it's always a dollar sign with conservatives at the end of the day, is gold and silver. Alex Jones is owned by Midas Resources, which is a large, one of the largest in America, gold and silver brokers. Physical gold and silver. Jim Fetzer used to actually be on the GCN network, and he used to, which Midas Resources owns, and he used to do gold and silver ads and would have bumpers that would do them. And in fact, he's still tied in websites that he's on, and his show is still tied to gold and silver purchases. Gold and silver dealers. This goes back to the federal government talking about this with a mainstream quote unquote conspiracy theorist who's not really, but you know how the mainstream plays is Glenn Beck. Goldline. Glenn Beck got caught manipulating Goldline, and Glenn Beck were manipulating the price of gold. And one of the ways they were doing it was fear. They would constantly tell you the dollar is going to collapse, imminent dollar collapse. Barack Obama is going to enslave all of you with a microchip in your brain. You're all going to end up being in FEMA camps. All your guns are going to be taken away. And Glenn Beck did this brilliantly. He's not a Sandy Hook conspiracy theorist or any of those, but he will scare the shit out of you by telling you how bad the current Democratic government is and how bad Democrats are, and they're the ones that are the problem. Cultural Marxism, all that bullshit, lies, nonsense, which is just veiled racism. I mean, that's all anti-multiculturalism is cultural Marxism is actually being tolerant of people, is actually caring about people, is actually letting it's a good thing that homosexuals are allowed to be gay. They don't have to, we're not all Christians. We don't all believe that everybody that has sex with another man is a fucking sinner and should be ashamed of it, or has sex with another woman. Who cares? Who cares who you fuck? I don't give a shit. So, and you should have the same rights that everybody else has. Taxation without representation. I always said this: homosexual people pay taxes, right? So if they pay taxes in our society, how come they're not afforded the exact same rights as heterosexual people? And another thing to that, did you choose your sexuality? Because I sure didn't. I'm straight. And I didn't wake up one day going through puberty and go, I really want to fuck guys or girls, but I think I'm just going to go with girls. I wish I would have that option. Can you imagine being able to fuck the other half of the fucking population and want to? Can you imagine how great it would be to be bisexual? How fucking wonderful it would be to be bisexual? But unfortunately, I'm not. And I know most people are not, and most people they don't choose their sexuality. They don't choose to be, we all know the little boy in the schoolyard who swishes around. We all know him. We all know the masculine girl who's really good at softball. Do you think they chose to be alienated from the rest of the people? Do you think they chose to be lonely? Do you think they chose to be isolated? No. So you don't choose your sexuality. And if you did choose your sexuality, then you're a psychopath. Your sexuality is chosen for you. Who you're attracted to, you don't have a choice. And that's always been my argument with gay. Even when I was a Christian, I was like, wait a minute, I didn't choose my sexuality. So I know gay people didn't choose their sexuality. So game on. And the Greeks used to think homosexuality was great. And by the way, homosexuality in this country was in the Western way we look at it, really was influenced heavily by Great Britain post World War II America. Buggery was illegal. Scientist, journalist, Alan Turing, many great people actually went to jail. I believe, am I wrong? Or wasn't Oscar Wilde died in jail because of buggery? Because what they needed to create more babies and for the factories. They needed to have the nuclear family. That's why the nuclear family exists in this country, by the way. You know that, right? The nuclear family is a lie. It doesn't exist. It's not real. But it was created because you needed to have 2 children, and you needed to stay in the house, and you needed to always procreate, and you couldn't be homosexual. And this was the stylized version of the exact perfect family because they needed more factory workers. This started in England. That's why they made homosexuality illegal. Because they needed people to not be openly. I don't care if you're gay or not, have children. We need the population. That's what it is. So, and then they use moral grounds and shit and fucking and Leviticus and all, whatever. But my point is about that is that the right wing doesn't like that. They think that their kids are being told that Johnny's got 2 mamas. Christ, the world's going to end. Meanwhile, they're letting the military-industrial complex just do whatever the fuck it wants to, and they're perfectly fine with the police forces mostly because they're not really affecting their kids. They're just busting black kids and Mexicans, in illegals. It's like Joe Arpaio, who's the centerpiece for the right-wing stupidity in this country, would not stop targeting Latinos when he was targeting illegals to deport them. He wouldn't stop targeting Latinos. Now, people are like, well, aren't most Latino? No, they're not. And in fact, you can't go up to somebody who you don't know and ask them for this isn't Nazi fucking Germany. You don't get to do that. Okay? Donald Trumpers, you guys don't get to go ask people for their fucking papers. And by the way, this was what Alex Jones was against don't you remember all those cop stops and shit? And Alex Jones would say, it's like Nazi Germany, they're asking me for my papers. Oh, I can't stand it. It's tyranny. I mean, don't we remember that? Where did that go? What happened when cops stopping Latinos and asking them for their papers? When was this okay with the right wing? The right wingers should be the ones because they were so pissed before, right? Not pissed now. So the right wing doesn't give a shit. They're gun-toting. They believe and they're easily manipulated. Gold stackers, people who buy gold and silver at 8% markup, that have goofy designs on them and take physical delivery of them are not sophisticated. In fact, they're quite dumb and gullible. They believe in imminent dollar collapse. They believe that eventually that all society's gonna break down, and you're gonna be buying your food and water with gold and silver. And Alex Jones has convinced them of this. Peter Schiff has convinced them of this, and they're all from the same groups. They're all from the same right-wing libertarian bullshit. And they just keep the von Mises, the Chicago school gets involved in this. The Austrian school, Ayn Rand. They all fucking love Ayn Rand. Rand Paul is named after Ayn Rand. There's all those wonderful billionaires that are all libertarians. Those fuckers that are in the Silicon Valley they're libertarians because they want to smoke pot and they don't want to pay taxes. But they love the military because if it wasn't for the military and the American taxpayer, they wouldn't be billionaires. You don't think Mark Zuckerberg would be a billionaire if it wasn't for the American taxpayer? And him using DARPANet and him having just so happens that it had a backdoor into everybody at Harvard's fucking email. Some of the most, Facebook is the greatest spying tool that's ever been created. Because you think you're just playing Farmville, but really you're doing is being spied on. And spied on in a way that it's banal, but it's used for corporations, which is exactly what the banality of evil, that saying, that's exactly what Facebook is. It's the banality of evil. That's what capitalism, that's what marketing is. It's the banality of evil, in my opinion. So you have the right wing, and they're all locked and loaded, and they all have professional conspiracy theorists full of them. You rarely will see a liberal conspiracy theorist. I am one. I'm a huge liberal. I love Eugene Debs. I'm all for socialism. I'm for unions. I'm a communist. I'm borderline communist. But you don't see the hard left anymore. You don't really see the hardcore lefties. And when you do, they're usually anarchists, or they usually just don't give a shit about anything else and are actually on the ground doing stuff, which is what I should be doing instead of fucking around on YouTube. But I live in Alaska right now, and so that's a little bit... That's neither here nor there. The point is, there is professional conspiracy theorists, and you live in a country that's called America that is driven by money and capitalism. This country is a business. That's all it is. And everybody commoditizes everything. They teach you now in seminars how to create your brand. I mean, they teach you places how to create... The normal person, you need to create your brand. Your name is your brand. You are your brand. You're selling yourself, which is disgusting if you know anything about labor rights. Selling your labor is absolutely fucking horrible if you really think about it, if you internalize it. Like, you don't own any means of production. Communism is really the only political party of the worker, which is what, 80% of this country. But because of propaganda and blah, 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 communism was the worst thing, is the most evil thing, but it's really the only party for the worker because it gives you rights. It gives you a contract. It gives you a guaranteed amount of money. It gives you ownership. Marx said it. Until you seize the means of production and the means of, you got to seize the means of production and the means of distribution. Those are the two things. And once you have those, everything is solved. Then everybody gets fed and everybody is equal. But until those are, blah, blah. And the right wing in this country throws around cultural Marxism and throws around all this shit that they don't understand, they don't know. They use the terms liberal media over and over and over again, all over the place. And they listen to everybody from Alex Jones to Rush Limbaugh, the whole spectrum. They watch Fox News because everybody watches, because it's mandatory in this country now that you watch state propaganda television. I mean Fox News. And you see all these. And then these right-wing conspiracy theorists love Russia Today as well. They love the Russian government, who has put out more videos on YouTube. Russia Today has more videos on YouTube than any other uploader. It's not even close. And, I mean, maybe Dabu is close. No, I'm kidding. But Russia Today they have the most videos on YouTube. And they just hired Jesse Ventura. And Jesse Ventura goes in this interview and goes, and yes, this is also, I can do my Jesse Ventura impression in 3, 2, 1. Jesse Ventura comes on this interview and he goes, you know, I'm going to work for Russia Today. And I met Vladimir Putin. And he told me he wasn't going to censor me. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. You know why he's not going to censor you, genius? Because you're talking shit about America. It's like listening to somebody on Fox talk about, a Russian person on Fox talk about the Russian government. Hey, Jesse, why don't you criticize Vladimir Putin and see how long this lasts? Why don't you go after some of his civil rights fucking shit? Why don't you go after his abuses of his power? He'll censor you with a quickness. Russia Today doesn't ever challenge their own, just like Fox News doesn't challenge the government here. Same fucking thing. And right-wingers and conspiracy theorists love Russia Today because Russia Today has Lee Camp on there, and it used to have Luke Radowski, and it used to have what's his name, that fucking Adam Kokesh and Abby Martin and Tom Hartman and all these people who, and I don't have a problem with. I don't know enough of Lee Camp. I think he's funny. I don't know enough about him to say bad or good about him. But the rest of those assholes are a bunch of faux fucking people who really are just trying to make as much money as they possibly can, doing exactly telling you really nothing you didn't know already. No offense to anybody of those people. I don't care. I don't pay attention to any of them. Fuck them. But the right wing loves that shit. They love it. They love listening to you bash this country, the Obama administration particularly, and they love hearing how bad it all is. And Russia Today pumps gold and silver sales as well. They have massive gold and silver advertisements because they know who's watching their stupid fucking show. I wouldn't watch Russia Today if you paid me. There's nothing. And I know you were saying to me, Jason, they have Chris Hedges on. Jason, they have Noam Chomsky's been on. Jason, Russia Today's a good. Sure, but there are other alternative sources that I can get that aren't Russian state-sponsored television telling me about America. I don't want another country's perspective. I want an independent human being's perspective. See what I'm saying? So, and the right wing loves it, and they have a double standard, etc. And there is a professional conspiracy theorist movement on YouTube that's very large. And I'm going to end it with this. Professor Doom has 45,000, 50,000 subscribers. Tyranny News Network has 20,000 subscribers. Brendan Hunt has 30,000 subscribers. Max Resistance, the Postal Service, Red Pill Revolution, Storm Clouds Gathering, many others that I'm missing. The people that get the SHH group, Sandy Hook Hoax community. There is a market out there for conspiracy, and these people are trying to become, in some cases, professional conspiracy theorists. They're salesmen of conspiracies. So you're never going to get truth from them. You're just going to get conspiracies. And maybe there's truth in the conspiracies, but the conspiracies come first. Sandy Hook is a conspiracy. Now let's talk about the facts of it. What? That doesn't make any sense. Jared Lee Lofton, it's a conspiracy. Now let's talk about the facts of it and then figure out where we are. Instead of jumping to the conclusion that it's somehow some secret government conspiracy to take away guns in America, which doesn't work. We didn't get mental health screenings. We're not getting any tighter gun regulations. In fact, in the city of Chicago, you can get a concealed carry permit right the fuck now. I know somebody that has one. So it's not, the restrictions aren't getting tighter, they're getting looser. When people start to feel their guns are being oppressed, even if they are or not, it's respected, they go out and buy guns. They want more guns. More places start to sell them. They appear more online. I mean, it's just ridiculous, this whole idea. But it's professional conspiracy theorists like Jim Fetzer. And Jim Fetzer did this in a video that Joel at Reichwatch did that really kind of broke me with my relationship with Joel. They were pointing out it's got to be that Jim Fetzer's an agent, not that he's just trying to get more attention and trying to create an issue that isn't there so people pay more attention to him. He's now talking about nukes used at 9/11. And he's been talking about it for a while, but now he's gone from thermite, Judy Wood, no planes, now it's nukes. I mean, 9/11 is running out of things you can make it up about. Then what is the next thing you're going to talk about 9/11? I mean, really seriously, what's the next one? You got it, because people then, I'll get more interest and I'll pay more attention. I know all about it, but now there's this extra little bit I didn't know. And it's not research, it's made up garbage. He did this with Alex Jones. He made a complete, and Joel points this out brilliantly. Joel just comes to a different conclusion. He comes out and says, I have a problem with Alex Jones. He pulled an article of mine and had a picture on it, and it was an article, and I don't know, and Alex is good on here's some issues, but this Jew thing, he just is terrible, that whole thing. And it's always blame the Jew because that's his audience. Okay? That's his audience. The anti-Zionist right-winger. That is his audience. So, Joel points out rightly that he's making an issue out of nothing. That picture was swapped on Prison Planet or wherever the fuck, InfoWarriors, retards.com, and fucking, it was just a better picture they put up. But Jim Fetzer made an issue out of nothing to get attention, and it worked. He got interviewed by a couple of people I'd never even seen before. Jim Fetzer will do an interview with anybody. He will talk to anybody. Go on Skype and talk to Jim Fetzer right now if you don't believe me. If you can leave a message, he'll call you back. He's a whore. He's a marketer. He's a marketer of conspiracy. He's smart enough that he can have a relationship with 10,000 people if he had to. He likes the fan attention. When I told him I was a fan of his, I made the whole reason I even know Jim Fetzer is I made a video on my old channel called Mike Ruppert is Dead Good, because I hated Mike Ruppert. And Jim Fetzer jumps on there and just destroys me. Calls me an asshole. I don't know what I'm talking about. Who the fuck am I? So I get a hold of him on Skype, and I'm like, hey, man, I was a fan of yours for a long time, in the 90s and into the late 90s and stuff. I knew who you were through the JFK. He's like, really? Well, hi, Jason. That's awesome. Why don't we do an interview, and I'll record you for the real deal or whatever the hell I'm doing. That kind of thing. And I was like, great. And we do the interview, and it lasts 25 minutes. And he comes in from the break of my guitar as my guitar gently weeps. And he comes in from his break, and we immediately go into Sandy Hook. And I say, why did you say the Mossad did Sandy Hook less than 20? Well, I thought because of that purple van, there was a lot of connections to the Mossad. I said, what connections? He said, well, Jason, there's a very nuance. If you don't understand the way the government works. I said, why did you say the Mossad? And he goes, you know what? I have written more about, and he starts talking about his resume and how much he's done. And I backed him into a corner. And then he's like, you know what? I said, what do you think? I said, he said, and you've read my Holocaust work, right? And I said, no, I haven't. I'm sorry, I haven't read a lot of your work lately. Because he goes, the Holocaust, there was not 6 million people that died. And this is Jim Fetzer telling me that he's a Holocaust revisionist and there wasn't 6 million people that died. And he was dead serious. Does Jim Fetzer strike you as the kind of person who's self-aware? Does he strike you as the type of person who really knows himself well? He doesn't to me. He seems like he's a 60s quote-unquote radical hippie type right-winger who served in Vietnam, got out, was disenchanted with the whole federal government, and went to work in the school systems, the college system of America, became a professor, and then started doing conspiracy work in the 90s and late. He may even go back to the late 80s, but I only knew of him in the mid 90s, 92, 93, somewhere in that area, 94, 95. So Jim Fetzer's been doing this for a long time, and now he did it with Sandy Hook, and he's the one that's come out of the pack out of everybody because he's smarter than everybody. I'm sorry, I hate to say that, but Jim Fetzer, he's pedantic, he's well-researched. Have you ever read his Paul Wellstone stuff? It's fantastic. He's done 9/11 stuff that's fantastic. He's done Sandy Hook stuff that if you think Sandy Hook is if you really do think it's a hoax, you would say that Jim Fetzer's work really he's asking some interesting questions. He's not. He brings up things that are easily debunked by the official story and other things. So he's not. But you think he is if you believe it's a conspiracy. And he conflates that with real conspiracies. Folks, not everything is a conspiracy. I hate to burst that bubble. There isn't a group of people in a room somewhere planning every fucking event that happens. And by the way, you live in a country that is motivated by money. It's capitalism everywhere. I mean, it is. Money talks, bullshit walks. And we have more guns in this country than any other country in the world combined. Okay? And we use more drugs than almost every other country in the world combined. We have 10% of the world's population and use something almost like 65 to 68% of the world's legal drugs. Painkillers, antidepressants, shit like that. We love them in this country. We eat them like candy. Xanax and we smoke weed. We drink more than any other country. There's fucking liquor stores on every corner. This is a country full of unhappy, miserable, selfish, paranoid, lonely human beings who have now even been more isolated. They were isolated from their TV sets, and now they're even more isolated because they're hanging out all the time online. So they don't have any interactions with, I mean, they do, but the interactions they have are with people who they can automatically just find people who absolutely will agree with their crazy-ass positions. and and we'll give money. We'll donate money. Poor people will say, "I just donated $5. I don't have it to donate, but I donated $5." There are people that I know online that I have thought about donating money to, and then been like, "What am I thinking?" People that I think were in genuine need, but I don't know if they are. They go on their YouTube page and tell you, "I have a job in this, but I need $5,000 to pay a bill," that's disgusting to me. People that do that are disgusting. But maybe they're not, because if their listeners want to give them money, then give them fucking money. I would never want anyone to tell me what I should do with my money, so certainly I wouldn't tell anyone else to do anything with theirs. But these are professional conspiracy theorists. They know what they're doing. Mark Dice is a perfect example of somebody with absolutely no talent. He's just a salesman of conspiracy theories. His whole point is gold and silver sales. Have you not watched Mark Dice? Did you ever see the famous video of Mark Dice going to a Taco Bell and offering the woman a gold coin, an ounce of gold coin for a 99-cent taco? And of course she says no, because how the fuck is she supposed to know the price of a gold coin or if it's real or whatever? But it's so funny. Oh, hello working class, hello lower working class human who's barely making minimum wage. Can I get a taco, please? In my truck. He lives in Los Angeles in somewhere in California on the coast in a city, and drives a truck. That's Mark Dice. And then writes this goddamn Illuminati book, which he just cut and pasted everybody else's Illuminati books, from Tex Mars to Jordan Maxwell to, I can point this out to you if you would, and others have pointed this out, but he just cut and paste. It's one of the worst things, and he just cut and pastes books together, self-publishes, and then can say, I'm an author of da-da-da books. So that gives him a cachet. He's a salesman piece of shit. A professional conspiracy theorist who only cares about gold and silver and is cruel. He's a cruel man. And because if you come on and you talk about conspiracies and you have no heart, I'm a fan of Mae Brussel. I'm a fan of John Rappaport. I'm a fan of Chris Hedges. I'm a fan of Noam Chomsky, Michael Parenti, Morris Berman, Neil Postman. I'm a fan of kind, good human beings. Vance Packard, I don't know if Vance Packard was a good human being, but I'm a fan of these men who tell you what the system is and have some heart with it and aren't just professional mindless conspiracy theorists, but give you context and historical references to go along with and get you down a pathway of better understanding of your environment and the forces that face you. Isn't that what conspiracy theorists should be? Isn't that what a conspiracy theorist should be? I think is they should be the person who can give you an opinion from a different perspective than you're getting from the mainstream media or from history. And sometimes history and the conspiracy theory should be lined up. And normally they are. In many years, it takes years later to come out in information. But when we start to be honest about conspiracies, we start to honestly, it's what Noam Chomsky called an institutional analysis. Once we do an institutional analysis of an event, then you can come to the conclusion. And it may take you years. It may take you decades. You may never know the truth because you don't have all the data. You're just not able to get it. You've reached the limits of human understanding on certain things. So, and you'll just start having to take people's words for it. And we remove all of the human element too. Conspiracy theories like to make everything robotic. 2 + 2 is 4. Conspiracy theorists who just keep going wild. 2 + 2 is 4. Everything has a plan. There's always an end game with it. There's a bigger picture you're missing, Jason, or anybody that doesn't. And by the way, I'm a conspiracy theorist. 9/11 was an inside job. John Kennedy was assassinated by the military-industrial complex /CIA /right-wing hardcore business interests of the South because the guy was only president for like 2 years and 10 months. Do you realize that? Kennedy wasn't even a president for 3 years. Isn't that incredible? Whatever. My point is, there are other conspiracies. There are things going on currently in the world that are conspiracies. There are cover-ups from the government. Iran-Contra is still happening today. The government is still bringing in drugs to this country. We're being fed a bunch of bullshit that it was all. I mean, look at some of these TV shows that are coming out. These fictional shows about Escobar and about the cocaine. He wasn't protected by the United States government. Like he wasn't helped and assisted by and other governments and government and dark secret forces that Oliver North was involved in, and the shadow government and all that stuff. Those are conspiracies that you should talk about, because that's important. That not only does that really impact you, really does have to do with your future, but you can prove them. So be wary of the professional conspiracy theorists. Not everybody in the conspiracy community that lies is an agent provocateur or making money or is disinforming for the government. In fact, most of them are doing it because it's a business opportunity. Plus, it's a big ego boost being the guy that everybody goes to. Gives your life some meaning, gives your life some purpose. Don't we all need purpose? What's your purpose? Just ask yourself, what's your purpose? Well, and I don't mean your fate or your destiny because I'm not religious. I mean, what's your purpose? Is it going to work every day? Is it building your business? Is it being a good mom? Is it being a good dad? Is it being a good grandparent? Is it being a good person? Is it trying to be smarter? Is it all of those things? What are your purposes? What's the things that get you out of bed in the morning? Well, maybe, look at Jim Fetzer. Look at Jordan Maxwell. Look at these guys. What drives them? What drives Alex Jones? Money. Maybe money and power and prestige and being around famous people and having fine things. That's the motivation. Because that motivates everybody else in America. Why wouldn't it motivate them? How are professional conspiracy theorists somehow immune to financial remuneration? You know? Is it remuneration or remuneration? I always get those confused. Both economic terms that I hate. And let me say this. There's a whole element to this that is hard to understand unless you invest a lot of time researching it. And that's why I made this video. Maybe this can give you some shorthand and you can look up what I'm saying and go, holy shit, Jason's right. Or holy shit, Jason's onto something. That's all this video is. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for all the support everyone's given me. Thank you for just being open-minded. And let's continue to kick ass. Thank you for listening.